Dreamers Awake, Chapter 4. "Of course you can stay after school and study," Aunt Maggie crowed. "Making friends so easily, just like your mom." Aunt Maggie gave a sad smile. Lydia was glad her aunt hadn't said no, but was pretty surprised by her enthusiasm. In fact, her aunt had been home with a snack ready when Lydia walked in the door. She had wanted to hear all about her first day and how things had gone. "What did you think of Mr. Wood? He's a hoot, right?" Aunt Maggie said. "Yeah, he's all right. A little frazzled. I like my chemistry teacher a lot, Ms. Godot. She's so smart." Lydia crunched on an apple smeared with almond butter. "Oh, I don't know her," Aunt Maggie replied. That was weird, Lydia thought. Hadn't Aunt Maggie gone to meet all her teachers before she started? If she hadn't, how did she know Mr. Wood? Oh well, Lydia pushed it to the back of her mind. "Well, I've got a mountain of homework," Lydia said as she finished off the apples and almond butter. "So I better get to work." Aunt Maggie looked a little disappointed, but nodded. Lydia remembered her clothing situation and wondered if maybe now was a good time to bring it up. She thought it was. "Oh, before I start, I wanted to ask about maybe going shopping this weekend. I know I just got here, but I don't have many outfits that will work in this weather. It's much colder than I'm used to." Lydia was going to say more, but Aunt Maggie cut her off. Of course. We don't have a great mall here in the city, but there's an excellent one up north in Alderwood. We can go there on Saturday. You'll be okay until then?" Aunt Maggie asked. "Yeah, should be fine. Saturday will be great," Lydia said. She really wanted to see if Wendy and Shamir would go with her instead of Aunt Maggie, but thought maybe that wouldn't be such a good idea. She remembered the vow she made yesterday to give Aunt Maggie a chance to actually get to know her. Besides, Aunt Maggie seemed really excited about it. Lydia smiled and made her way up the stairs. "Let me know if you need anything. The desk in your room should be fully stocked." Lydia thanked her and made her way down to the basement. With the late afternoon light streaming in through the small windows, the chair and TV looked decidedly less creepy. Although still puzzling, seeing as how Aunt Maggie had a fancy setup upstairs with a big screen and a cozy-looking couch. She went to her room, leaving her door open, turned on some quiet music, classical, her favorite study music, and started with chemistry. Homework went quickly as she worked her way through science, math, and French. She stood up and stretched. It was time to start English, and she was dreading it. Mr. Wood had told her to catch up with the Cliff's Notes of The Great Gatsby. She had read this book a few months ago at her old school, but like with most fictional stories, it simply leaked out of her head and she only remembered bits and pieces. She picked up the book and Cliff's Notes from her desk and sat down on her bed. She pulled a blanket around her shoulders. The sun was setting, and it was beginning to feel cooler in the basement. She read 2 sentences, then fell deeply asleep. She woke suddenly, her room totally dark, no light from the hallway or the moon outside spilled in. It was as if she hadn't even opened her eyes. But there was a shape in the dark. She couldn't quite make it out. There was a cracking noise, like brittle plastic breaking. "Hello?" she said, or tried to say. It came out as a squeak, not even a word, really. She was freezing, and the cracking noise kept sounding around her. She wanted to ask who was there, but since her voice had failed her before, she didn't try again. Very gradually, the shape in the dark took on more definition as it drew nearer the bed. She scooted back against the pillow, holding the blanket tightly around her. James appeared, and Lydia found her voice. "God, James, you scared the crap out of me." Lydia began to relax a little, but there was a loud crackling sound, and James spoke. "You are not Matilda," he said. His voice boomed loudly. Lydia covered her ears and stared at him. He opened his mouth wide, wider than anyone should be able to, but he didn't scream. The cracking just became louder. "Stop!" Lydia closed her eyes. It was silent, and she opened her eyes again. Tyler was standing there. "Tyler, what are you doing here?" Lydia asked. She stood up and took a step towards him. "You're not Matilda," Tyler said, and shoved his hands deep in his pockets. He turned and walked to the open door Lydia could barely make out in the dark. He walked through, and Lydia followed. "Wait, Tyler, what are you—" She looked through the door, and there was no one there. She felt colder now. Her blanket was on the bed, and she moved towards it to wrap herself up again. When she leaned down to pick up the blanket, something shoved her from behind. She flipped over quickly to see Michelle leaning over her. "He's mine, bitch. He's mine." Michelle leaned into her, smiling widely, showing all of her teeth. Lydia turned her head. Suddenly, the cracking started again, and Lydia looked back. Michelle had been replaced by the mashed face of what might have been a girl at one time. She was bloodied and dirty and smelled like asphalt after a brief rain. Her hair was matted and spiked out in all directions. Patches of skin were missing from her arms that pressed Lydia's own arms into the bed. The cracking grew louder, and Lydia heard a voice in her head as the girl opened her mouth unnaturally wide like James had. A girl's voice issued from the void of mouth, although it didn't move. "You're not me." The girl leaned close to Lydia, who began to scream. Suddenly, she felt herself being shaken. She jumped up. Aunt Maggie jumped out of the way of her flailing arms. "Lydia, it's okay. Wake up. It's a bad dream," Aunt Maggie said loudly. Lydia stopped flailing and looked around. Only 15 minutes had passed since she sat down to start reading. The sun hadn't set completely, and orange light still filtered into the bedroom through the small basement windows. "Are you okay? What was all that about?" Aunt Maggie asked, putting her hand on her back. I'm fine. I don't know. Bad dream." She shrugged her aunt's hand off. "I'm fine." She stooped to gather up the bunched blanket and her books. Her aunt didn't look like she believed her, but took a step back anyway. "Okay. Well, dinner will be in about 10 minutes, give or take. You hungry?" Aunt Maggie's forehead was still wrinkled in worry. "Yeah, sure," Lydia said. She sat on the edge of her bed and gave a forced smile. "Okay, well, I'll call you when it's ready." Aunt Maggie left the room and went back upstairs to finish dinner. Lydia took a deep, shaking breath. It had only been a dream, a really intense, terrifying, gross dream. It had just been a stressful day, she tried to reassure herself. That's all it was, just a stress dream. But she thought she could hear a soft cracking noise as she made her way back upstairs for dinner, and she dreaded coming back down when it was time for sleep.